Hi, my name is Gil Robertson, president of the African American Film Critics Association. Today, we're thrilled to have the talent and creatives who contributed to the amazing Apple TV Plus series, Masters of the Air. We're going to kick things off by introducing you to the African members who are on the call today with Philippe, Derek, Nancy, Al, and Kiri. I'm going to let you guys do what you do so well, and I'll see you on the other side.
When you look at it, you don't pay attention to what's really going on. It's kind of beautiful.
We came from every corner of the country with a common purpose.
Go, 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 go!
To bring the war to Hitler's doorstep.
These daylight missions. It's suicide.
And watch the move.
We lead our boys through it.
Getting through this, even if the odds are stacked against us.
First time in the sawmill, boys. Let's rack 'em up and knock 'em down.
Hello, everyone. I'm Philippe Patterson from Taji Magazine over here in Washington, D.C. Hello. Thank you for joining us.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
No problem. One of the things that impressed me the most was the showcasing of the intelligence and the background in science and math of the Tuskegee Airmen. How important was it to you all to portray it and for the actors, of course? What impressed you most about the Tuskegee Airmen in that aspect?
I mean, just to set them up a little bit, but I mean, the thing that I think was really interesting about these characters in particular and the airmen as a whole is that, they were more educated, and skewed a little bit older than their peers, right? And so, I relied a lot on Alexander Jefferson's and also Richard D. Macon's oral history projects. There were interviews that were done with them. And so, like, in working with Josiah and Brandon, I really just wanted to kind of like bring forward some of these men's biographies, as was present in these oral interviews like they had done and in their kind of own kind of words. And so, I was working to find like their cadence and find their kind of way of speaking. Macon doesn't phrase something the way Jefferson would. And so for me, the fact that they were college educated, that they were like overqualified in so many ways, I thought was exciting. And when they talk about, there's so much story behind like how they even got here. So before they even arrived at Ramitelli, I was impressed by everything they had to kind of like endure just to arrive here, and that these men were in truly like making sacrifice and the stakes are higher for them.
Right. I think for Alexander Jefferson too, his book was so in depth of his life before, so I really got to see who not only he was as a person, but also his education level and how committed he was to that. I mean, even to the point of after being in the military for so long, then being a school teacher for until he retired as well, and after. So I was very impressed. I'm not a huge science guy or math guy, but to play someone and to experience someone who was, it does kind of show you a different way of thinking about the world and knowing that you have kind of that other level of intelligence as well as his artistry. So, he was able to not only have the right side and the left side of the brain kind of going for him, which was absolutely incredible when reading this book.
I think Brandon touched on a very poignant part, I think, of what we were trying to um, achieve essentially when he was explaining about how Jefferson's I guess progression after post-military life when he became an educator. I think that was kind of always the bedrock of these two men, where there was this unconscious learning amongst each other, and it was rooted in earnest, specifically with Richard D. Macon and his almost eidetic memory when it came to numbers, and parts of a machine, how they function, why they function. Being that young and having the wherewithal with that kind of intelligent um, poignance in him to question his superiors, I think was very um, important to see on screen, specifically with these young black men, because I guess never before have we seen kind of what that dynamic would look like between a superior and a subordinate, and specifically those being black men, and kind of just redirecting the entire way the war kind of went, in some instances, like some of those moments in Ramatelli.
How's it going? Happy Saturday. Derek Dunn, Reviews and Dunn, based in the DMV area. So I had a question for Josiah and Brandon. How did you all build your camaraderie on the set while shooting?
Me and Brandon have answered this question like 100 times already, but I think it really just started with the authenticity, with the environment that D created. To be honest, I mean, D created this bedrock for us, to kind of just jump in the deep end from the beginning. We were on a block shooting schedule, so we were like shooting out of order. So I think the first scene we ever shot together, we were all together, and it was me, Brandon, and Shooty. Brandon specifically and Shooty, they were holding me up on their shoulders the first time we ever met. So I think kind of being plunged into the deep end, with my brothers, I think it kind of set the tone and it set the stage for us to kind of elicit that chemistry on screen.
Yeah, I think we also had a kind of a training session with the rest of the Tuskegee Airmen as well, and the Ramatelli group. So that was a good intro to just learning that dynamic of everyone being together, being a unit, seeing all these black officer soldiers, also being led by Lieutenant Dan, who was great, but it was a white superior, just like in our first day of shooting was literally Shuti and I putting him on our shoulders, and walking into the POW camp as the only black people there. I mean, we hadn't even met Callum or Austin yet, and they were kind of on the other side of the fence, literally. So we didn't meet them for a while either. Um, so it kind of, art was imitating life, life imitating art, and dropped us in very quickly. And so we were able to kind of lean on each other quickly, and be able to talk to each other throughout the entire process. So it worked really well, I think.
I'm Nancy Green with Film Critique, and I just wanted to say I find it very interesting, this time period. And Dee, you did, of course, another movie, or a movie a while back, Mudbound, that also kind of deals with that. And I wanted to know, what is your fascination with this time period, and what do you hope people will take away from this series? And also, Brandon and Josiah, if you can answer that as well.
Yeah, I think although this is like my second kind of story in the World War II kind of like space, I think I'm interested generally in like the Black fighter, or like the Black soldier, and what it means. Like, I had adopted like years ago this like Toni Morrison novel called Home, which is about a soldier during the Korean War, and like I couldn't get it made. And that was the first war where the forces were integrated. I'm always interested in like what would compel somebody to fight for a country that doesn't fight for you, And in introducing these characters, I was fascinated by the fact that these men are allowed to go to war, they're allowed to carry guns, they're allowed to kill, they're allowed to sacrifice their lives, but they don't have the right to vote, you know? And so I think I'm always trying to wrestle with that in my mind. Like my dad's like a retired cop. So I've always, I think, been like challenged by that notion, that kind of split thing that happens, like how could you, you know, be a part of, you know, a militarized kind of system that often works against you. And it just made me question the idea. I think I'm always trying to explore the idea of who is a patriot and who gets to be a patriot. And so for me, I think that these men are true patriots because they're not just serving their country, but they're critiquing their country, and they're, you know, literally using their lives to impact it, you know, behind enemy lines, you know, abroad and also at home. So I think I'm just like a little bit obsessed with that. And like, you know, we start the story here in World War II, but this could be World War I, where we weren't even allowed to fight for our country. We were like fighting like with the French, you know, like, or you could do like the Revolutionary War, where like enslaved peoples are now like, you know, convinced to fight against the British. So I think for me, it's like an ongoing kind of fascination with like what goes on in the mindset of, you know, and the bravery and the patriotism like that it takes for men to make this kind of sacrifice, and, you know, to just have this kind of intellect, to have that kind of complicated relationship with like militancy and freedom. So yeah.
I share a similar obsession with that dichotomy, with the Double V campaign, with, you know, just being, as Dee was saying, a Black patriot, and what does it mean to be a patriot, and what does it mean to fight for a country that at home most cases, and then you have to fight to try and prove yourself to then come back and still say, you know, fresh off the boat, niggas to the left, white people to the right, like that's what does that do to the mind, and how does that affect you when you, because you ultimately have to look at the bigger picture in a way that I don't know if we really have a concept of nowadays. I think, especially for my generation, it is so far removed that sometimes the closest we can get is a TV show like this, or a good documentary that tries to put us in as much as possible. But really, when you do think about it, you know, the the magnitude of what these people were fighting for was huge, without knowing what the end result would be. So I just share a same fascination with World War II, specifically with Black soldiers in World War II, Buffalo Soldiers, Korean War as well, and World War I. I think, yeah, seeing the Black experience through that. I mean, and we've only in film at least have been able to slightly touch on it relatively. So that's why I was super excited for this project. And it was honestly a dream come true to be able to work on something like this, because I'm so passionate about showing those stories on screen, so people can recognize their grandfather or their great grandfather, and understand a little more what they may have had to go through. And I just hope that more stories like this can be told, so we can go even deeper into the complexity of what that actually meant.
Kind of to echo, I mean, everything, you know, that Dee and Brandon said. I think that as the operative word for me, fascination, as a Black artist, I think that fascination often is stalled out a lot, and it becomes a yearning specifically for me. And the yearning is in what it means specifically for the role as a Black person that exists in this social construct of America. And specifically during that time, my grandfather, he served in the Vietnam War. And for me, the fascination always just stayed rooted in a fascination, and never really uh there was never really a touchstone. There was never really, well, okay, pops, well, why did you do this? And it was just a very straightforward, this is what I had to do. And I think that for me, climbing inside the mind and psyche of Richard D. Macon, I think that there was this meta this meta social commentary that was happening, specifically, you know, in the storytelling that, you know, Dee, you know, so eloquently, you know, wrote and directed, that as people and audiences are watching Masters of the Air, you see this, you know, this kind of wink or nod at, you know, when Macon is getting interrogated by the Germans. And, you know, he's, you know, essentially in front of, you know, this German Nazi, basically telling them, I have every reason not to be fighting for this country. you know, and in this moment, I'm standing with these men that I'm calling my brothers, and they won't even call me their brother. And I think that that's something that just goes without saying, when audiences, are watching what we created.
Yeah, no,
Yes,
like
thank you.
for
And
like
Kier, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to leave you out. If you wanted to.
oh no, I was gonna piggyback on what Brandon and Josiah were saying. Like it was like playing out, in front of and behind the camera, and that, it was a challenge to like introduce these characters, in a single episode and like try to layer them, so that they're standing shoulder to shoulder with their peers, and I mean, to their credit, like they were able to give it that complexity. We only meet them a few times before they're in the camp. And in the writing of it, originally we just met them in the camp. And I was like, no, we got to meet them in the air, like we met everyone else in the air. And so it's important to see their prowess, to witness, and starting with this night bombing sequence, kind of playing into the pejorative Nazi kind of word, like the Spookenwaffen, like, oh no, they're gonna come in at night and you're not gonna see them until they light it up, and just even their entrance, the way they entered the story for me was important, and honestly, you could have a whole series called Ramatelli, and just be with them.
Mhm.
There's so much there. And even like having like the bar scene where we get to understand like what they are fighting for. Like Macon has this piece of land that he loves. Like Jefferson like kind of wants to be an artist and he has this woman that he loves, So it's kind of showing how, these men also have like a heart. They also have stakes was, really important, other than meeting them within like the literal, battle and the little, so just to give them context always basically is what I was
Thank you
excited.
for that, D. Thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Oh, thank you for going there.
You hear that,
Nice,
Apple?
nice.
You hear that, Apple? We need to spin off now.
Yeah,
Yes.
that was kind of going to be my next question. Kier Stowe's a SACTAB movie buff television. Obviously these are rich characters that could have been expanded upon. And are there going to be any type of spinoffs, or are there any plans in development for something like that to continue telling these types of stories?
From your lips to God's ears, man. I love these
Yeah,
characters.
right.
Like so much more.
Mhm.
Like there's so much that got cut. I mean, but we bear, just alone there, and even like, you mentioned the camaraderie, right? And so because we were shooting out a sequence and we shot, their big briefing scene after they had already kind of gotten together, I was trying to like break them apart. It's like, oh, they're not all sitting together, because you're trying to like show how they naturally kind of, become kind of comrades. But because I feel like there's just so much more to explore. And like the performances Brandon and Josiah gave were so heartfelt. Like in the audition process, it's hard because it's pandemic, so it's not in person, it's like on a screen. And just both of these men just like leapt off the screen and like, in the not even being in the room with them, you could feel the spirit, you could feel the passion. They were, and it's like, okay, yeah, that's Jefferson, yeah, that's Macon, So and with Shuti, like there's just so much charisma and so much there. So anyway, I'm gonna stop gushing, but yeah.
Thank you, D.
I'm Al McGee with YETicket.com. I'm here in Boca Raton, Florida. Well, I'm going to ask a general question because I'm always interested to know a little bit of your history yourself. First of all, D, why did you want to be a director? And also, Brendan and Josiah, why did you want to become actors? Because it's such a hard art form to be a success. And why did you all want to get into these fields that you're in? But I see how great you are, and also that series is very, very good. So how did you get started? Why did you get started?
For me, in a weird way, like this is like my second life. Like initially I went into like marketing because like I'd seen Boomerang and I wanted to meet Stranger. So I was like, all right, I can do that. And then I realized I was like on the wrong side of the table, like the ad agency like does all that. And so then I actually got laid off from a job, then quit a job and wanted to like write. And I was like, this is what I want to do. Like, and so writing led me to directing. Like I thought I just wanted to write. And then I would get involved with these characters and couldn't bear the idea of handing them off. And then, that led me kind of to directing. So I came at it kind of sideways. So.
That was a beautiful question, sir, by the way, and I love your background that you have behind you. But for me, I think that I think I think the spirit of art, specifically when it comes in relation to this story, I would say this is a story that, you know, you always wish you saw, but it just never was there. And I think for a lot of the reasons why I wanted to become an actor, it was kind of just this unconscious. I want to see something that I'm not seeing, and then you're led down this path of, okay, how would I do a Charlie Chaplin monologue, or how would I do a Buster Keaton one man show? And then just the way that I guess, you know, theater, cinema has been, you know, given to us specifically as Black artists. We were kind of, you know, like left out of a lot of things. You just as I guess the hearkening, I guess, in the story that we told with Masters of the Airs. No, 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 we were there too. We were there too, and we were very much so involved. And I think just my wanting to contribute, I think, is where everything kind of just stems from. I just wanted to contribute with, I guess, I was good at speaking, you know, and then that kind of just like snowballed into, you know, me developing, you know, the devices and techniques, of the craft of acting itself.
If I'm honest, I wanted to be Indiana Jones and Jason Bourne and James Bond. I think those three, weirdly enough, were kind of my way in. I used to watch movies with my grandpa all the time. And when I was younger, I just simply said one day I want to be the person that he's watching on TV. And that was kind of the snowball effect for me. I was in school, and being in school, I grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina. So, you know, being in Charlotte, the only way, the only real way at the time was kind of going the school route. So I was doing theater, and that's kind of where my beginnings happened. I did a little background work because Charlotte had some stuff going on, but um, I did theater all through high school, and I went to school for theater as well, and then did theater again in acting school afterwards. And yeah, that was just kind of my way in, and I got my first job right after theater school. Uh, but I think deeper than just wanting to be the person that my grandfather watched on TV, because I've been blessed to be able to do that by now. I think there's something about the human spirit that's really interesting to me, and there's something about um, acting that's so different than all the other art forms, because you're really getting inside the mind, psychology, and spirit of a person. And I feel like that's so complicated and hard. And when you have great writing and great direction, you can really see that and connect to that. And as I grew kind of in my own artistry, I just kind of realized that my goal, or what I think to be my goal, is to try and get someone to look at my character and relate to themselves in some way. And so once I kind of discovered that, I felt like that felt really connected to my purpose and connected to the type of artist that I want to be. Um, and so I think this is one of the only art forms you can do that in, and it really touches me. So that's why I thought that acting was the one.
Well, thank you very much, everyone, for giving me your answers. And also, another reason why I enjoyed the show, I'm an Air Force veteran myself during the Vietnam
All
era.
right.
So that's why I really
Thank you for
love
your
the show. That's
service.
why I'm so glad to talk to you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank
It's
you for
an
your
honor,
service.
sir. Thank you.
Hello, it's Philippe from Taji Mag. What are some of the life lessons or takeaways you have from being a part of this project? This is for all three of you.
Life lessons. Man, I don't want to be cliche or cheesy, man, but like, you know, honestly, I feel like we shot this so long ago, and it's etched in stone for me, that period of time. Like Dee said, we were coming out of the pandemic. The world was such a different place at that time. And I think that it, you know, will forever, in stone, Be For Me a Time, where I met, some men that I truly am inspired by, moved by, and I think will be, my brothers for the rest of my life, and Brandon and Shooty. And I've never had that type of experience on set. I've been, kind of professionally doing this thing, for almost like a decade now, and I've never really had that type of um, familiar type of experience where like I'm actually connecting with my co-stars and needing them being a great scene partner turned into them being great confidants, you know shooting the shit with your bros. And I think that's very rare in this industry, specifically with it being such a dog eat dog type of space. Specifically for us as Black actors, we don't historically, we never, it was only one man at a time, and now we're in a space where, we kind of all could like share a piece of what's happening. And I just am forever grateful for that. I think that was like the biggest life lesson for me.
I mean, the thing I think I learned in terms of life is just about like taking my time, Usually, I'm working in independent films where it's like you got to shoot a war scene like before lunch, you know what I mean? And so this is like the first time I had to just like, we have 3 days to just shoot planes coming in. And so I learned, oh, here's the shots you can design when you have 3 days to shoot something versus 3 hours. And I learned to like revel in that. And also, I don't know, try to let the actors like rev, like to take up that space and to like take up that time. And like, yeah, it's great to make your day and finish on time, but if you're 15 minutes over and somebody got to do another take and they got to give something more, it was worth it, And so not to be watching the clock so much and to let, like to revel in like the unfolding, of a scene. And so this production, thanks to Gary Getzman and the whole team was very, I mean, this is like the most generous production like I've worked on. So it was nice to have resources. It was nice to have time. It was nice to, just let the crew unfold in that and to really, really shoot it, in a way that was compelling and interesting and give the actors more time to like unfold their performance, So yeah.
I think this has definitely been probably the one of the best moments of my career thus far, and I learned a lot about myself in the production of just like my process and what that's like, and being on a X million-dollar set, and the scope of that and what that means and how to operate in that and how to figure out your energy with your other castmates, but still making sure that you can figure it out for your scene. And so I think overall this was a huge growing experience for me as an actor, and one that I will forever hold dearly to me. Thanks to Dee, thanks to Josiah and Shuti and Gary and the whole cast and crew. So yeah, I think just an overall growth as an artist. This was great, amazing.
Thank you all once again. I really enjoyed the show.
Thank you.
Thanks
for having us.
Thank you.
How's it going? Derek Dunn once again. So my question is for all three of you: what's been the greatest piece of feedback you've received from viewers or from critics regarding the show?
I don't read reviews, you know what I mean? Like, like famously, for my health. But I mean, I think just the general, like the stuff that kind of floated back to me was just a general appreciation for like this part of the story with, Megan and Jefferson. And so I felt, I don't know, it felt like kind of like a sigh, like finally, we're included. Like there could be so much more, but I think I was glad that, okay, you know, even though the space we had was limited, the fact that people appreciated it and felt just like a shift, in the tone of the storytelling. So yeah.
No,
I definitely would echo what Dee was saying. I don't think that there was any, I guess, specific review or critic, think piece that I mulled over or anything like that, but just the general scope of the reception where, you know, I've been in, smaller productions and stuff like that before, and I feel like the recog the rec I don't know how to say the word. The production being recognized more widely, I think, was something that I felt a little more with this one. And the age ranges. You know, people from the age of 17 to 81 years old, you know, kind of giving feedback. Oh, we love the show. Oh, this meant a lot. I think that was the biggest kind of like, oh man, like I guess everyone's watching the show. So that kind of how I saw it.
I think going to we went to Alabama recently, where the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen are housed, for lack of a better word, but that's where their bases are. And hearing their reaction was a really big, was really meaningful, I would say, because you know these are servicemen and women that take it seriously in terms of the legacy, and they also felt seen just in seeing that Red Tails and Tuskegee Airmen, and knowing that they're a part of that. And also, you know, there aren't a lot of aviation and plane films out there, so they were even excited about that. But more importantly, they were excited that they felt like we did a good job of representing them, and the reception that we got when we went there to visit was really was really special. And you know, hearing things like, is it going to get a spinoff? We loved you guys, wish there was more of you guys. I think all of those things to me say that we did a really good job of what we were set out to do.
And also like with the airmen, like just down to the mechanics of the planes they're flying, you know, as opposed to the bombers where it's 12 men, you know,
Mhm.
in these planes for one, like they're the pilot, they're the navigator, they're the bombardier, they are, you know, they're the mechanic, they're performing all the functions. So I love the idea of like this, like, you know, instead of 12 men, 20 men to planes, like, you know, it's a army of one, like in that way, you know, and they're keeping these tight formations with and also, you know, understand like where the target is, and also, you know, with an awareness of like, you know, each other's like, you know, making it back. So just that alone shows like the brilliance, you know, and of the real life men that pull this off. And it's like hard to imagine that, you know, I mean, just shows the brilliance of these aviators. And I'm glad, you know,
Yeah.
there's in part.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, man.
So one of the things I wanted to know, especially with a show like this that goes into war and things like that, was anything for you triggering? And also, what was like the most difficult thing for you to film, whether it was physical or emotional?
The first day that we talked about was actually, if you allowed yourself, was tough. I mean, look, the cast and the crew were great. There was obviously no real whatever, but I think when we kind of sat in that and allowed ourselves to really understand the given circumstances of we are kind of the only black pilots going into this war camp, POW camp, and not really understanding what that's going to mean and how that's going to feel. And one of our brothers is hurt. And, you know, that goes into the later scene of Jefferson with Buck, Buck, yes, Buck, Clevin. And yeah, Buck and Bucky, I always get it confused. But going into the scene with Clevin, Major Clevin, and trying to suss him out and figure out what does he want from me, and how is this interaction gonna go, and thinking those things were, like I said, when you allow yourself to really get into that mindset and get into that time period, we're a little like, oh, okay, I get it, I get it a little more, and you know, I wouldn't say necessarily triggering, but it did trigger emotions of understanding more, or awareness and empathy of the time and the people who had to go through that. And they did a good job of setting those scenes, especially with the scene with me and Clevin. Me and D talked about that one a lot. So yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think that D geniusly, you know, stimulated and created an environment that above else, you know, it was safe. It was inviting. She allowed us to try things, and I think in that freedom, like Brandon said, like those real feelings, they did come up, but I think that we had a responsibility, and that responsibility weighed more on us to execute correctly, or not correctly, but to the best of our ability, where it should have felt uncomfortable, but for the right reasons, so we could, kind of execute authentically, and staying true to, like Brandon said, what it really meant for those men in that specific time. When me and Brandon walked into the POW the barracks, for the first time, that really was I think D set it up like that on purpose. It was very claustrophobic in that room. Like,
Yeah.
you could barely breathe in that room, and like then you add on top of it, it's like, okay, the two black guys are here now in a room full of 30 white guys. You know what I'm saying? So but like Brandon said, the cast, everyone was amazing. We were laughing and getting coffee like right after we called cut. So I think that we all kind of knew the mission that was at hand, and for us to execute was extremely important.
Yeah. But you guys had such a facility like with the text. And so that was different. Like, this was not a production where people were like learning the lines, figuring out the lines, paraphrasing. Like, you guys were tight on the text. So I mean, that gave me freedom to play, because it's like, okay, now it's just like emotions, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, you guys word for word we're like word perfect, in a way that, as a director you can take for granted until you don't have it. Like, oh God, like, did you, but I mean, Brandon, Josiah, the whole I mean, the text was there. And so that freed me to play all like subtext. And I was gonna say the same scene as you, just like that walking like into the bunk room, like, just from a production design standpoint, yeah, we made those even tighter because it wanted to be like, another man's foot is always in your frame, is always in your face.
Yeah.
There's always another body. They're all the bodies are stacked. And then into that moment, like, these men who've never been in close quarters with a black man in their life, except in the service thing, are now going to be in close quarters with you. And like, I really wanted to push, and I really wanted to make it uncomfortable. And like, this is not going to be okay. Like, they're not going to be okay with this, but how do you, how do Macon and Jefferson have their dignity? They're coming in, they're standing square. One has a literally broken neck, but he's still like, ready for however way this goes, like, and so it's tense, like, oh, if this comes to fight, this man's neck is broken. Okay, if it's not a fight, like, how's this gonna work? So I love designing that scene with you guys, and thank you guys for like being game, and just thank you guys for being so just, I've never had cast like so just dead on like with the text. Like, we weren't, because that just freed up everything, so we're spending time playing with it and not fixing anything.
Yeah.
Thank you, dude. Thank you.
Thank you, dude.
Thank you. Fascinating, and much success with the show.
D, I'd like to know, how did this process work? You directed episodes 7 and 8, and those are the most impactful to me episodes because it brings everybody together. Again, you had the airmen, the Tuskegee Airmen, finally seeing the guys they were protecting in the air, because they never got to see them on the ground because they were coming from London and places like that. But how does this process work where they tell you, or well, how did that work where they tell you what episodes you're going to direct?
Yeah, so Cary Fukunaga like invited me on, and it's funny because I had just reached out to him to say, hey, the James Bond trailer looks dope, you know what I mean? And he's like, what you doing? I was like, chilling, he's like, oh, like, come hop on the show. And it's funny because it was either 5, 6, or 7 and 8. And so he kind of like laid it out. He told me he's going to talk to Ryan and Anna. And so kind of he told me what 7, 8 was going to be. I was like, yeah, I want to do that. And like episode 8 wasn't even like written yet. It was kind of just like a sketch. And but I like the idea of the men being grounded, And so for me, I do want the action, sexy, fun stuff, but also to me, I said, okay, well, there's a challenge. Like, if you don't have the explosions and sexy stuff, like, how do you deal with these men who are separated from their machines, And then it's going to be about ego. It's going to be about like almost like their internal, like, do they collapse under the kind of feeling of failure? Do they collapse under uncertainty, So that actually made it more attractive in terms of like a character study, and like across the board with like Clevin and Egan, it's like, okay, away from their tools, away from their kind of like resources, like how do they kind of find a sense of themselves, in this place, and it was fun to start to like chip at that and have it deteriorate, and to introduce like a new world, which is like the world of the camp, which could have like a dustier feel, which could have a different palette completely. So photographically is interesting because then you can kind of change the color of the thing, and you have reason because you're in a different space. So I think that's how it came about, and I felt kind of like, okay, if I'm going to do this episode, then like, it's going to be for the right reason, and I'm going to bring, like these guys are talking about, my own family history with, grandfathers in the military, and try to infuse as much as I can. So yeah, but it was exciting to work with. And it was exciting because it was just like about relationships in some ways, and just about like them wrestling with their own internal kind of demons. So yeah.
Yeah, I saw that in those episodes and how they were just really focusing on the characters in episodes 7 and 8. And you did a great job. And again, I want to thank Apple Plus for putting this show on, but also to hiring you guys. You all did a great job. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Kia Erstos, that kind of movie buffs television again. So just to kind of bring it home, I mean, obviously, if we don't get a spinoff or anything of this nature, what are some additional, I guess, Black stories, Black rich character stories that you guys would like to be able to tell moving forward in the future, in the same kind of vein of this show? So.
Go ahead, D. Now, I want to hear. I want to hear what D got.
I was also like, there's a book called All Blood Runs Red, and it's about Eugene Bullard in World War I. It's like insane. This guy was like a pilot. He like started like a jazz club. He was like a spy. It's like you wouldn't believe it. And he comes from like, he was like his parents were sharecroppers. He was a sharecropper, but in it's World War I. So he's fighting like for the French. But like that dude's life is like, wow, okay, you contained multitudes. So I would suggest that as a good reading. And also just to dig into the Oral History Project, where you can read the actual interviews with Jefferson and Macon, because there's so much more in there that we couldn't cram in. So
there was a tank battalion during World War II called the Black Panthers, before the Black Panthers, that I'm really interested in. I heard a couple people have it out, so I've been kind of looking around for it. But also definitely the Buffalo Soldiers have always interested me. I mentioned them earlier. And then Vietnam. I think those three, if I can hit those three time periods, World War I obviously too, but it's so different than World War II. But yeah, Buffalo Soldiers has always been a big one. The tank battalion of the Black Panthers of World War II, and Vietnam War. Because I don't know if there's been any films actually made about specifically about the Black experience during Vietnam, specifically about home and abroad, besides Five Bloods.
I definitely de-alluded earlier to the Korean War. I think I have a lot of fascination with the Korean War and what the Black soldiers' role was that predating World War II. Because I mean, World War II, we have the obvious, implications of what's happening back home in America. But I think World War I is a whole different type of vibe. You got the Harlem Renaissance in there. You got the Roaring '20s. So I think that would be a very great angle, just to see on screen in any type of way to me.
Harlem Hellfighters, yep.
Yeah.
That'd be dope.
Thank you. No, that's great. I'd love to see some stories about all of those. I think that'd be fantastic, especially like the Korean War, Buffalo Soldiers. I think those would be great.
Brandon, Josiah, D, we thank you for your time today. These two episodes were our favorites. And it's largely because of the talent here that was involved. On behalf of the world's largest group of Black film and TV critics, we thank you. Know that we're following you. Know that we're supporting you. Know that we're here for you. We'll see you on August 24th.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for watching this edition of AAFCA Roundtables. Have a great day.